When I discovered the family jewels were missing, my daughter was the first to sound the alarm. "It's her! The new caregiver! I never trusted her!" she screamed, calling the police. The poor woman was almost arrested, but I knew it wasn't her. My daughter had one weakness, our old cat who loved to sleep in her purse. And when I shook the purse, my mother's ring fell out along with a ball of fur. If you're ready for this journey, make sure you hit that subscribe button and give this a like so you don't miss the updates. And let me know in the comments what city you're watching from. It's always lovely to see where everyone is. Now, let me tell you how it all began. It started with a fall, a stupid, silly fall over a wrinkle in the area rug in my own living room. I'm Eleanor, by the way. Most folks call me Ellie. I'm 68 years old, and up until that tumble, I'd have told you I was as spry as a woman of 50. I've lived in this house for 45 years. It's the house my husband David and I bought right after our daughter Brenda was born. It's where every memory I hold dear resides. David's been gone for 10 years now, and the house can feel awfully quiet, but it's mine. After the fall, which resulted in a broken wrist and a badly bruised hip, my daughter Brenda insisted on getting me some help. "Mom, you can't be here all alone," she'd said, her voice thick with that particular brand of concern that always felt a little bit like a lecture. "What if you fall again and can't get up? You need someone here just for a few hours a day." Brenda is 42, my only child. She has a decent job in marketing, but you'd think she was living on a shoestring the way she talks about money. She's always been, well, dramatic. Everything is a crisis, a catastrophe, a 5-alarm fire. When she was a little girl, a scraped knee was cause for a Shakespearean death scene. As an adult, not much had changed. I love her dearly, but her constant state of high alert is exhausting. So, Brenda arranged for a caregiver. Her name was Maria, a woman in her early 50s, originally from the Philippines, with the kindest, gentlest eyes I'd ever seen. She was quiet, almost shy, but her competence was unmistakable. She'd show up right on time, help me with the things I couldn't manage with a cast on my wrist, cooking, some cleaning, driving me to doctor's appointments. She'd tell me about her children and grandchildren back home, the ones she was working so hard to support. In the quiet afternoons, we'd sit and drink tea, and for the first time in a long time, the house felt a little less empty. I trusted her completely. Brenda, however, did not. "Don't you think she's a little, nosy, Mom?" she'd ask after Maria had left. "I saw her looking at Grandma Silver in the dining room." I'd brush it off. "Brenda, she was dusting. It's her job." But Brenda would just press her lips into a thin line, unconvinced. The day it happened started like any other Tuesday. Maria came for her morning shift and left around noon. An hour later, Brenda bustled in, full of her usual frantic energy, holding a bag of groceries. "I have to get you stocked up, Mom," she announced. She was supposed to take me to a friend luncheon later that week, and she wanted me to wear the pearls David had given me for our 25th anniversary. "They'll look perfect with your blue dress," she said, heading for my bedroom. I followed her. She went straight to my mahogany jewelry armoire, the tall one standing in the corner by the window. She pulled open the side door where I kept my necklaces. "Where are the pearls?" she asked, her voice tight. I looked. The hook where they always hung was empty. "That's strange," I said, starting to feel a little prickle of unease. That's when Brenda tore it open. She pulled out the velvet-lined drawers, one by one. "Oh my God, Mom, oh my God," she voiced escalated with each empty slot. "The locket my grandmother wore every day of her adult life, gone. The diamond earrings David bought me after Brenda was born, gone. My mother's engagement ring, a beautiful Art Deco piece that I kept in a special box. The box was there, but it was empty. All of it vanished." I know this part is hard to hear, but it's important. The truth was about to come out, and it was going to be glorious. Before I could even process the violation, the sheer shock of it, Brenda was on her phone dialing 911. She didn't ask me. She just did it. And she started screaming into the phone, then at me. It's her, that Maria. I told you, Mom. I told you not to trust her. She was here this morning. She was the only one. The scene that followed was the most humiliating and heartbreaking thing I have ever witnessed. Two police officers, a man and a woman who couldn't have been much older than my daughter, arrived. And just as they were starting to ask me questions, Maria let herself in for her afternoon shift.
Brenda rounded on her like a predator. There she is. Officer, that's the woman who robbed my mother. Maria froze in the doorway, her bag of groceries still in her hand, her face a canvas of pure, unadulterated shock. What? No, ma'am, Brenda didn't let her finish. She was a whirlwind of accusations, telling the police that Maria was new, that I was a vulnerable old woman, that she had suspected her from the start. Maria, bless her heart, tried to defend herself, but her English faltered under the stress. She was terrified. I could see her hands trembling, the color draining from her face. Officers, there must be a mistake, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Maria would never. Mom, stop, Brenda snapped, turning to me with tears in her eyes. You are just too trusting. You don't see people for who they are. She fooled you. To the police, I must have looked exactly like the person Brenda was describing, a fragile, confused senior, unable to accept that she'd been duped. They looked at Maria with cold, suspicious eyes. They asked to search Maria's purse and the tote bag where she kept her work uniform. She consented, tears now streaming down her face as she dumped her life out onto my coffee table. A half-eaten apple, a well-worn wallet with pictures of her family, a book of stamps. Nothing. Of course they found nothing. Still, they took her statement and told her she was a person of interest. She couldn't leave town, and the agency, they said, would have to be notified. Her job, her livelihood, her lifeline to her family across the ocean was gone in an instant, all based on Brenda's screeching, theatrical certainty. After the police and a devastated Maria had gone, Brenda fussed over me, making tea, plumping pillows, playing the role of the dutiful, protective daughter. But something felt profoundly wrong. It was too smooth, too practiced. Her grief was loud, but my own, which should have been gut-wrenching, was being suffocated by a strange and terrible suspicion. She finally settled into the big armchair across from me, her oversized leather purse sitting on the floor beside her. And that's when Marmalade appeared. Marmalade is my cat, or rather, he was David's, a 17-pound ginger tomcat with a grumpy disposition and a deep love for two things, sunbeams and my daughter's handbags. It had been a running joke for years. Whenever Brenda came over, Marmalade would make a beeline for her purse, no matter where she put it, and start kneading it, purring like a motorboat, before settling on it for a nap. He did it then. He lumbered over, sniffed the expensive leather, and began to push his paws into the side of the bag. Brenda shooed him away absentmindedly. Oh, Mally, stop that. But I watched him, and I watched the bag, and I watched my daughter. And in the quiet of my violated home, a tiny, horrifying idea began to take root. An idea so ugly I could barely look at it. That single horrifying idea was a poison ivy vine wrapping its way around my heart. Could my own daughter, my only child, orchestrate something so cruel? Accuse an innocent woman? Steal from her own mother? Not just things of monetary value, but the touchstones of my entire life? It seemed impossible. And yet, the over-rehearsed performance, the immediate leap to blaming Maria, the crocodile tears. It felt less like genuine shock, more like the third act of a poorly written play. Brenda stayed for another hour, chattering on about filing insurance claims and the importance of hiring from more reputable agencies next time. I have a friend whose mother uses this service out of Boston, very high-end. All the caregivers are bonded and background checked within an inch of their lives, she said, scrolling on her phone. I watched her, the loving, dutiful daughter, already solving a problem she may have created. I thought about the last few months. Brenda's online boutique, Breezy's Baubles, which sold trendy, cheap jewelry, had been her passion project. But lately, when I'd ask how it was going, her answers had become vague. I remember her mentioning a big bill from her supplier, something about needing to infuse some capital to stay afloat. A few weeks ago, she had asked for a loan. Not a huge one, $5,000. I told her I'd have to think about it. My money was tied up in CDs, and with my new medical expenses, my fixed income was feeling a little less fixed. She'd been frosty ever since. Could $5,000 have driven her to this? No, my jewelry was worth so much more. This was about more than a loan. This was about everything. As she prattled on, I let my gaze drift back to the big leather purse on the floor. Marmalade was now sound asleep on top of it. His ginger fur was a stark contrast to the black leather. Brenda had a habit of leaving her purse unzipped. She lived in a state of organized chaos, and a closed zipper was a step she rarely bothered with. From where I sat, I could see the clutter inside. A wallet, a lot of receipts, a half-empty water bottle, a tube of lipstick. Just normal things. My heart ached for me to be wrong. I pleaded with the universe, with God, with my dear David to please let me be wrong about this. And just when she thought she had me completely fooled, she forgot about my two oldest and most loyal companions, my common sense and my pat. Stick with me, because what I did next changed everything. Brenda finally stood up, stretching. Well, Mom, I should get going. I have an early meeting. Don't you worry about a thing. I'll handle the insurance company. She reached down to scoop up her purse, jostling a very grumpy Marmalade who let out an indignant meow and jumped away. As she settled the heavy strap on her shoulder, an idea sparked in my mind. It was a long shot, a desperate play. I pushed myself up from my chair, a little too quickly. I feigned a wobble, my hand flying out toward her for balance. "Whoa, a little lightheaded there," I mumbled, my good hand landing squarely on her purse. "Mom, be careful," she cried, grabbing my arm. "I'm fine, dear," I said, steadying myself. But I didn't remove my hand from her bag. Instead, under the guise of regaining my balance, I gave the purse a firm, sharp shake. Not a violent one, just a quick up and down jolt, as if I had stumbled against it. I was aiming for chaos, for gravity to do what my courage couldn't. For a second, nothing happened. Brenda was fussing over me, guiding me back to my chair. My heart sank. I was wrong. I was a terrible, paranoid old woman making monstrous accusations in my own mind. Thank God. And then I heard it, a soft but distinct thump. It was the sound of something small and heavy hitting the plush fibers of the Persian rug. Brenda didn't seem to notice, but I did. My eyes darted down to the floor by her feet, and there, nestled in a pattern of deep blue and crimson, was my mother's ring. It was unmistakable. The Art Deco platinum setting, the small but brilliant old European cut diamond in the center, flanked by tiny sapphires. It was one of a kind. The very ring Brenda had pointed out was missing from its box. It must have been in a side pocket, unzipped, just waiting for the right nudge to escape. Lying right beside it, clinging to the wool of the rug, was a telltale clump of ginger cat fur. Proof. Time seemed to slow down. Brenda was still talking, something about drinking more water, but her voice sounded like it was coming from the end of a long tunnel. I couldn't look at her. I could only look at the ring. The ring my father gave my mother in 1948. The ring I wore on my right hand for 30 years until arthritis made it impossible. The ring I was saving for a granddaughter I would now never have. Slowly, as if in a trance, I bent down. It was a struggle, with my bruised hip, a series of pained groans and careful movements. Brenda finally stopped talking. "Mom, what is it? Did you drop something?" My fingers, old and stiff, closed around the ring. The metal was cool against my skin. I straightened up, the ring pinched between my thumb and forefinger. I held it up in the space between us. The color drained from Brenda's face. The cheerful, concerned mask she had worn all afternoon didn't just slip, it shattered into a million pieces, revealing something cold and ugly underneath. Her eyes darted from the ring in my hand to my face, then back again. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. The charade was over. We both knew it. The air in the room grew thick and heavy.
charged with the weight of her betrayal and my awful, certain heartbreak. For a long, silent moment, the only sound in the room was the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall, each tick marking a second of a life that would never be the same again. Brenda's face was a frantic, chaotic mess of emotions. I could see the panic in her eyes, the gears turning as she tried to calculate her next move to conjure up some plausible lie that could explain away the impossible. She found her voice first, a weak, stammering whisper. "Mom, I don't know how that got there." "You don't?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. I wasn't shouting. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of a screaming match. David always said my quiet anger was far more terrifying than my loud frustration, and I was about to prove him right. "That's funny. It seems to have fallen out of your purse, along with a clump of Marmalade's fur." I flicked the tuft of orange hair off the rug with the toe of my slipper. "I suppose my cat is a jewel thief now, is he?"
No, of course not. Maybe Maria planted it there when she came in. Brenda's desperation was making her sloppy. I let out a short, sharp laugh that held no humor. Maria, who you've just had all but arrested, planted my mother's ring in your purse, a purse that hasn't left your side since you walked in, a purse she's never even touched? Make it make sense, Brenda. Tears started to well in her eyes. Real tears this time, not the performative ones from before. But they were tears of self-pity, not remorse. "Mom, you don't understand," she sobbed, sinking onto the edge of the armchair. "Everything is such a mess. The business, it's failing. I owe so much money. I was going to lose everything." I just looked at her, the ring still held up between us like a judge's gavel. "So you decided to take everything from me instead. My mother's ring, your grandmother's locket, the pearls your own father gave me? And you were going to let poor innocent woman go to jail for it? A woman working to feed her family thousands of miles away?" Each question was a soft, deliberate blow. The weight of what she had done seemed to finally be dawning on her. Her sobs grew louder, uglier. "I was going to pay you back, I swear. I was just going to pawn it for a little while, just to get back on my feet. Then I'd buy it all back and put it back. You'd have never even known." He was about to get exactly what he deserved, and I had a front row seat. Except in this case, the he was my daughter, and I wasn't just in the front row, I was the director of the whole show. "I'd have never known," I repeated, my voice now laced with ice. "I knew the moment you opened the jewelry armoire, Brenda. I knew by the look on your face. You were playing a part." I took a step closer and she flinched. "Now here's what's going to happen. You are going to open your ridiculously expensive purse and you are going to take out every last piece of my jewelry that you have stuffed in there. You are going to put it on this coffee table right now." Her hands trembled as she obeyed. She unzipped the main compartment and began to pull out my life's treasures, wrapped clumsily in tissue paper and shoved into side pockets. The pearls, the diamond earrings, my grandmother's locket, my own first wedding band, the plain gold one David couldn't really afford but had bought anyway. Seeing them emerge from the depths of her handbag felt like watching a desecration. When she was done, a pile of glittering history lay between us on the polished wood of the coffee table. "Is that all of it?" I asked. She nodded miserably, sniffing. "I swear, Mom, that's everything." "Good," I said, my mind working faster and clearer than it had in years. The fog of age, of grief, of a broken wrist, it all burned away, replaced by the sharp, cold clarity of purpose. "Now, you are going to open your ridiculously expensive purse and you are going to take out every last piece of my jewelry that you have stuffed in there. You're going to put it on this coffee table right now." Her hands trembled as she obeyed. She unzipped the main compartment and began to pull out my life's treasures, wrapped clumsily in tissue paper and shoved into side pockets. The pearls, the diamond earrings, my grandmother's locket, my own first wedding band, the plain gold one David couldn't really afford but had bought anyway. Seeing them emerge from the depths of her handbag felt like watching a desecration.
When she was done, a pile of glittering history lay between us on the polished wood of the coffee table. "Is that all of it?" I asked. She nodded miserably, sniffing. "I swear, Mom, that's everything." "Good," I said, my mind working faster and clearer than it had in years. The fog of age, of grief, of a broken wrist, it all burned away, replaced by the sharp, cold clarity of purpose. "Now, you are going to pick up your phone, and you are going to call the police station. You are going to ask for Officer Daniels. She's the one who seemed to have a brain in her head. And you are going to tell her that you had a miraculous realization. You are going to tell her that you were so distraught and confused you must have moved the jewelry yourself for safekeeping and completely forgotten about it in your panic. You will clear Maria's name. You will tell them she is completely 100% innocent. You will apologize for wasting their time." Brenda looked up, her face streaked with tears and makeup. "Mom, they won't believe me. It sounds crazy." "You are an expert at sounding crazy, Brenda," I replied flatly. "You gave an Oscar-worthy performance of it an hour ago. Now do it again, but this time do some good with it. Make that call now on speakerphone." Her fingers shook as she dialed. I stood over her, an old woman in a housecoat with a cast on her wrist, feeling more powerful than I had in a decade. I listened as she stammered her way through the lie I had concocted for her. It was pathetic and flimsy, but it was what the police wanted. A simple, clean resolution to a domestic squabble. They bought it. Officer Daniels sounded more annoyed than anything else. "So, to be clear, ma'am," she said, her voice dripping with skepticism, "the items are not stolen." "No, officer, they are not. It was a terrible mistake. I am so sorry." "And the caregiver, Ms. Garcia?" "She had nothing to do with it. She's completely innocent," she recited, glancing up at me for approval. When the call was over, Brenda slumped back in the chair, drained. "There, I did it. Are you happy now?"
Happy? The word was so absurd I almost laughed again. "No, Brenda, I'm not happy. We are not even close to being done here." The first step was complete. Maria was safe. My heirlooms were back on my coffee table. But this was not the end. This was the beginning of my daughter's education. "We're not done?" Brenda echoed, her voice small and childlike. "What else is there? I called them. I said it was a mistake." I calmly began picking up the jewelry from the coffee table, piece by piece, cradling memories in my palm before placing them back in their velvet-lined drawers. "Oh, there's a great deal else," I said without looking at her. "Firstly, you are going to call Maria's agency. You are going to tell the manager exactly what you told the police, that it was a grievous error on your part. You will insist they reinstate her immediately, and you will request, specifically, that she be the only one assigned to me from now on. You will give her a glowing review. Am I understood?" She nodded numbly. "Secondly," I continued, closing the last drawer with a soft click, "you are going to the bank tomorrow morning. You'll withdraw $5,000 in cash from your account." Her head shot up, her eyes wide with alarm. "5,000? Mom, I can't. That's all I have left. I need that from my supplier, for rent." "You should have thought of that before you decided to liquidate your mother's entire history," I said, finally turning to face her. "You are going to take that money. You're going to put it in an envelope, and you are going to bring it here. And then you and I are going to go see Maria. You are going to hand her that envelope, and you are going to apologize to her face to face. You will beg for her forgiveness for the humiliation and terror you put her through today. The $5,000 is for damages, for the distress you caused, for the potential loss of her livelihood, for the absolute disgrace of being accused of a crime she didn't commit." "She won't take it," she whispered. "She's too proud." "She will take it," I stated with certainty, "because I'm going to tell her it's an advance on her salary, that I want to pay her for the next several months just so she knows she has security. She doesn't ever have to know where it came from. But you will know, and you will feel the pinch of that $5,000 every single day for the next several months. Perhaps it will serve as a reminder." I know this part sounds cold, but it had to be done. Justice wasn't just about getting my things back, it was about repairing the damage and forcing my daughter to confront the consequences of her selfish and cruel actions. The truth had come out, but now it was time for accountability. The following day played out exactly as I had dictated. Brenda made the calls. The agency manager was frosty, but agreed to speak with Maria. Brenda then went to the bank, returning with a thick envelope that she handed me with a resentful glare. The fight had gone out of her. She was now moving in a fog of sullen compliance. The hardest part was driving to Maria's small apartment in a part of town I rarely visited. She lived in a simple 2-room flat above a laundromat. When she opened the door, she looked tired and afraid. Her eyes widened when she saw Brenda standing behind me. I didn't give her a chance to retreat. "Maria," I said gently, "may we come in? We have something to tell you." We sat in her tiny, immaculately clean living room, and I watched as Brenda, prompted by my unblinking stare, stammered out an apology. It wasn't eloquent, it was halting and choked with shame that was for the first time genuine. "I was wrong, Maria. I'm so sorry for what I put you through today." I then stepped in, explaining the official story of my confusion. I told Maria how much I valued her, how much I needed her. I handed her the envelope, explaining it as an advance, a sign of my commitment to her continued employment. The relief that washed over Maria's face was so profound, it nearly brought me to tears. She didn't want the money at first, but I insisted, folding her gentle hands around the thick envelope. She was my friend, I told her, and this would give me peace of mind. She hugged me, weeping with gratitude, and the weight of what Brenda had almost done, destroying this good woman's life, settled in the room like a physical presence. Driving home, the silence in the car was a solid thing. Brenda stared out the passenger window, silent. I knew this lesson, as harsh as it was only the first. Restitution was one thing, but the bigger issue remained. My daughter was broken in some fundamental way. Her business was a failure. Her ethics were non-existent. Our relationship, once merely strained, was now fractured down to its very foundation. Trust? That was a country I wasn't sure I could ever visit again. When we got back to my house, I told her to sit down at the kitchen table. I made tea, the ritual calming my nerves. "We need to talk about your boutique, Brenda." She looked up, surprised. "What about it?" "It's a failure," I said bluntly. There was no sense in coddling her anymore. "It's dragging you into debt and turning you into this." I gestured vaguely to encompass the events of the last 24 hours. "So, you're going to dissolve it."
Dissolve it? Mom, that's my dream. It's a nightmare, I corrected her. A nightmare that almost cost an innocent woman her freedom and you, your mother. You will sell off whatever stock you have. You will pay off your suppliers with that money, and you will get a job, a real job, with a regular paycheck. No more fantasies. She just stared at me, her mouth agape. It was as if I'd suggested she fly to the moon. In her mind, the real world of 9-to-5 work was for other people. But I had a plan. This wasn't just about punishment anymore. It was about rebuilding my daughter from the ground up, whether she liked it or not. The financial restitution was paid. Now it was time for the real revenge. The best revenge. The revenge of a life lived well and a life forced back onto the right track. My plan was just beginning, and she had no idea how deeply involved I was about to become in her life. Brenda stared at me as if I'd grown a second head. Dissolve my business? Get a job? Mom, you have no idea what you're talking about. Breezy's Baubles is my brand. It's who I am. I just need a little more time, a small investment to get over this hump. I poured the hot water over 2 tea bags in our matching mugs, the ones we'd bought at a pottery affair in Vermont 20 years ago. The simple domesticity of the act felt surreal in the charged atmosphere. I pushed her mug across the polished oak of the kitchen table.
Your brand is built on cheap trinkets from China and a mountain of debt, and it turned you into a person who would steal from her own mother and frame an innocent woman. Your brand is bankrupt, Brenda, in every sense of the word, morally and financially. We're done talking about it. You can't do this, she shrieked, her voice rising to that familiar hysterical pitch. You can't just dictate my life. I am a grown woman. I am a grown woman who was caught with her hand in her mother's jewelry box 5 minutes after calling the police on the cleaning lady. I took a sip of my tea. It was scalding, but I welcomed the sensation. You lost the right to make your own decisions when you made that one. I paused, letting the silence hang between us before I played my final card. And just so we're clear, that story we told the police about my confusion and you misplacing things, that was a gift, a fiction I concocted to save you. It can be unconcocted. I am one phone call away from telling Officer Daniels the whole sordid truth, complete with a security camera. Brenda's face went white. Security camera? What security camera? The one I had installed last month after that package was stolen from my porch. I lied without batting an eye. David used to say I was a terrible liar, but apparently when the stakes are high enough, a person can learn new skills. It's motion activated, right there on the bookshelf in the corner. It caught the whole thing there. You opening the armoire, you pocketing the jewelry, you dialing 911, your entire performance. The bluff landed like a physical blow. She actually sank back in her chair, deflated, the last ounce of fight drained out of her, replaced by a sullen, terrified resignation. I didn't own a security camera, but she didn't know that. All she knew was that her mother, who she had viewed as a frail, trusting, slightly befuddled old woman, now held her entire future in the palm of her hand. She thought the worst was over. She had no idea her real punishment was just beginning. Stick with me, because watching my high-flying daughter get a reality check was something you don't want to miss. Here's the plan, I said, shifting into a business-like tone. I've already made a call to Barbara Jensen. Brenda blinked. Barbara? Your friend from the garden club? Barbara is more than my friend from the garden club. She's the executive director of the Tri-County Senior Alliance. They're looking for an administrative coordinator. It's not glamorous. It's answering phones, scheduling transportation for clients, processing paperwork for meal deliveries, and generally dealing with old folks who are often lonely, confused, and demanding. Like me. I let that last phrase hang in the air. The pay is probably half of what you think you're making, but the paycheck is real, and it comes every 2 weeks. You want me to be a glorified secretary for a bunch of old people? She said, her voice laced with disgust. I want you to learn what real problems look like. I want you to look into the face of a woman who can't afford her medicine and her groceries in the same week. I want you to talk to a man whose only human contact is the volunteer who brings him his lunch. Maybe it will give you some perspective on what a true catastrophe is, because let me tell you, Brenda, a failing jewelry business is not one. Barbara is expecting you for an interview tomorrow at 10 a.m. Don't be late. The next week was a whirlwind of controlled demolition. I supervised as Brenda dismantled her dream. She spent hours on her laptop, not curating a new collection of gaudy earrings, but slashing prices on her existing stock, trying to liquidate everything. The Breezy's Baubles website was plastered with closing down sale banners. Every cha-ching from her phone, which once signified a triumphant sale, sounded like a death knell. She aced the interview with Barbara. Of course, she can be charming and polished when she wants to be. Barbara called me afterward. She's a little overqualified, Ellie, she'd said, but she's got spunk. I told her she starts Monday, 90-day probationary period.
I thanked her, feeling a small, guilty pang at not telling my old friend the whole truth, but it was a necessary deception. Brenda's first day was, from all reports, a shock to her system. She came over afterward, looking like she'd been through a war. Her stylish blazer was rumpled and her hair was a mess. "Do you know what I did today, Mom?" she said, flopping into my armchair and kicking off her heels. "I spent 2 hours on the phone with a man named Mr. Henderson trying to arrange a ride to his dialysis appointment because his daughter, who lives 2 blocks away from him, refused to take him. Then I had to field a dozen calls from people complaining that the Meals on Wheels chicken was too dry." "Sounds like important work," I said mildly, handing her a glass of iced tea. "It was horrible," she wailed. "The office is beige, the coffee tastes like dirt, and my boss, Barbara's deputy director, wears orthopedic shoes and times our lunch breaks. It's a prison." "It's a job, Brenda," I said, "and for the next 90 days, it's your job. You can get a new one after that, if you like, one of your own choosing. But for 90 days, you belong to the Tri-County Senior Alliance. You're going to pay your rent with a salary you earned doing something other than living in a fantasy world. And my security camera footage is staying right where it is." The unspoken threat was clear. A strange new routine settled in. Brenda went to her beige prison every day. I had Maria back, a smiling, calming presence in my home. We never spoke of the incident again, but there was a new warmth between us, an unspoken bond of gratitude. With the $5,000, she was able to pay for her grandson's surgery. She showed me pictures of him, a smiling little boy. My daughter's crime, filtered through my own harsh justice, had accidentally done some good in the world. It was a bizarre and complicated feeling. I saw less of Brenda, but our interactions were different. The frantic, self-absorbed energy was gone, replaced by a profound exhaustion. But something else was happening too. Little cracks were appearing in her cynical facade. One night, about a month into her new job, she called me. "You're not going to believe this," she said, her voice different. Not complaining, just reporting. "Mr. Henderson's daughter, she didn't just refuse to take him to dialysis. She drained his bank account and moved to Florida. He was sitting in his house with no power and no food. We had to call Adult Protective Services." He was quiet for a moment. "He gave me a nickel when I left. He thought I was the Meals on Wheels driver. He said, 'Here you go, sweetheart, for your trouble.'" I didn't say anything. I just listened. The education of Brenda was continuing, and it was happening in ways I could never have planned. She was finally seeing a world beyond her own reflection. But the 90-day mark was approaching. The specter of my lie about the security camera hung between us. I knew that couldn't last forever. Something was going to have to give, and I had a feeling that the next crisis wasn't far away. As the 90-day probationary period at the Senior Alliance neared its end, I could feel a subtle shift in Brenda. The initial shock and horror of her beige prison job had mellowed into a kind of weary acceptance. The stories she told were no longer just complaints. They were dispatches from a world she had never known existed. She talked about a Mrs. Gable, a former concert pianist with dementia who would play phantom chords on her walker. She fumed about a slick salesman from a reverse mortgage company who was targeting their clients. For the first time, Brenda's drama was focused outward on the injustices faced by others, not inward on her own manufactured crises. She was also, for the first time in her adult life, financially stable. Not wealthy by any means, but stable. She was paying her bills on time without cryptic comments about cash flow problems. One Saturday, she came over and, quietly, without any fanfare, began weeding the overgrown flower beds in my backyard, a chore she had found a million excuses to avoid. As I watched her from the kitchen window, her hands covered in dirt, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in a very long time, a cautious, fragile hope. The 89th day of her probationary period fell on a Tuesday. Maria was in the kitchen, humming as she prepared a chicken soup that smelled of dill and home. Brenda was due to come over for dinner that evening. The phone rang, and I picked it up. It was Barbara Jensen. "Hello, Ellie. How are you?" "I'm doing well, Barb.
To what do I owe the pleasure? I'm calling about Brenda, she said. Her probation is up tomorrow, and I just wanted to tell you, well, I'm stunned. After that first week, I was ready to bet my pension she wouldn't last a month. She seemed like a fish out of water, a very expensive designer fish. I chuckled. She can be a bit of a handful. But, Ellie, she's become my rock star, Barbara continued, a genuine sense of awe in her tone. She redesigned our entire client intake system. The old one was a mess of carbon copies and mismatched files. Brenda, in her spare time, mind you, created a digital database that has cut our paperwork in half. And she's incredible with the clients. She has the patience of a saint with the grumpy ones and the kindness of an angel with the sad ones. That Mr. Henderson you told me about, she organized a donation drive at her old gym and got him a new lift chair. Everyone adores her. We're offering her a promotion. My hand tightened on the receiver. A promotion? Yes! Deputy Director of Client Services. It comes with a real salary, Ellie, and real responsibility. She'd be in charge of the entire outreach program. I think she's found her calling. He was about to get exactly what he deserved, I had once thought about Brenda. But I was beginning to realize that what she deserved was changing. Maybe it wasn't punishment. Maybe it was a chance. When I hung up the phone, my mind was racing. The foundation of our new arrangement had been a lie, the security camera. For 3 months, I had held that fictional sword over her head. But now, she was succeeding on her own. She was becoming a person I could almost, finally, be proud of. To keep the lie going felt wrong. It felt like a betrayal of the new person she was trying to become. The control it gave me, which once felt like righteous power, now just felt like a dirty secret. That evening, Brenda arrived for dinner. She looked different. Her makeup was more subdued, her clothes less flashy. She brought me a small pot of orchids. A 90-day present, she said with a small, wry smile, for putting up with me. We sat at the kitchen table, the aroma of Maria's soup filling the room. After a few minutes of small talk, I took a deep breath. Barbara called me today, I said. Brenda tensed immediately, her fork hovering over her bowl. Oh? She told me they're offering you a promotion. Deputy Director of Client Services. She says you're the best thing that's ever happened to the Senior Alliance. A complex series of emotions played across my daughter's face. Shock, pride, and then a familiar shadow of fear. She put her fork down. Right, she said quietly. But the 90 days are up, so what does that mean for us? Am I still on probation with you, too? It was the question that had been weighing on me all afternoon. Was she? Was this new Brenda real or just a performance to get out from under my thumb? Was she rehabilitated or just temporarily compliant? I reached across the table and put my hand on hers. Her skin was cool. There's something I have to tell you, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. There's no security camera, Brenda. She stared at me, uncomprehending. What? The security camera, on the bookshelf. It doesn't exist. I made it up. I had a box from a doorbell camera that had been delivered, and I bluffed. I was angry, and I was hurt, and I knew it was the only way I could make you understand the consequences of what you'd done. The color rose in her cheeks. For a second, I saw a flash of the old Brenda, the righteous indignation, the fury of being manipulated, and I deserved it. It was a terrible thing to do.
But then something surprising happened. She didn't scream, she didn't rage, she simply deflated, pulling her hand from under mine. A single tear tracked its way down her cheek, leaving a glistening trail. She looked up at me, and her eyes were full of a new, raw, and aching honesty. You want to know the craziest part, Mom?
Her voice cracked. For the first few weeks, that stupid camera was the only reason I didn't walk out of that place. But then, a few days ago, Barbara mentioned my probation was ending, and my first thought wasn't, great, now I can quit and be free of Mom's blackmail. My first thought was, oh my God, I hope they let me stay. What will Mrs. Gable do without me? She finally broke down, her shoulders shaking with silent, heaving sobs. It wasn't the performative crying I had witnessed 3 months ago. This was the real gut-wrenching grief of a woman finally meeting herself for the first time. The grief of recognizing just how lost she had been. I got up, walked around the table, and for the first time since that horrible Tuesday, I put my arms around my daughter. And she leaned into me, crying into my shoulder like she did when she was a little girl with a scraped knee. The fortress I had built around my heart, the one made of righteous anger and clever revenge, finally crumbled. Because this was better than revenge. This was redemption. Our relationship isn't perfect. Trust, once shattered, doesn't glue back together seamlessly. You can always see the cracks. But we're building something new. Last week, Brenda used her first big commission check from the Senior Alliance not to buy a designer purse, but to set up a small trust for Maria's grandchildren's education in the Philippines. She told me it was the first installment of a debt she could never truly repay. Sometimes when she comes over for dinner, I see her glance at the bookshelf in the living room where the imaginary camera once lived, and we share a look. Not one of threats or power, but one of understanding, a shared, silent acknowledgement of the terrible lie that, against all odds, ended up uncovering a deeper, more profound truth. I lost my jewelry, and for a time I thought I had lost my daughter. But in the end, with the unwitting help of a grumpy old cat, I found them both. What would you have done in my place? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.
Your watch to the end. Be click here. You will hear another story from my grandma.